In China, there's a region of the country in the northwest called Xinjiang, and it's over 20 million people. Well, they're Muslims, and they're from an ethnic group called the Uyghurs. They don't consider themselves Chinese, even though they're Chinese citizens. You know, I was a Pentagon spokesman for 4 years, from 2005 to 2009, and we had 22 Uyghurs at Guantanamo. And even though most of these guys were lower-level fighters that supported al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan, once they were determined suitable for release, we couldn't get rid of them because China would kill them or torture them if they went back to China. So believe it or not, the U.S. government asked over 90 countries to take them. And finally, after years, Albania took some, Bermuda took some, Palau took some. But China does have a major problem with this region, and there are a lot of separatists, and there are some terrorists there too. So basically, China's answer is to just crack down on them all and put 1 million of them in these re-education camps.
Right. It's absolutely horrifying. It's not just Muslims that the Chinese government is oppressing. It's also Christians. I mean, we see pictures sometimes of President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, and he looks fine. You don't look at him and think, oh, there's an evil man. But what he's doing since he's taken power, Xi Jinping, he has cracked down on Christians to the point where it's actually dangerous to go to church, to go to a place of worship in his nation. He wants his people to worship at the altar of communism, and if they don't, they just mysteriously disappear or they're arrested. This pastor that I mentioned in the introduction, he was charged with inciting subversion of state power just because he chose Jesus Christ over communism.
Well, Liz, there are two things here. China has a very complicated history with Christians. In the mid-1800s, while we fought the Civil War here in the United States, China had a civil war too called the Taiping Rebellion. It was a rebellion against the Qing dynasty. 20 million people died in that rebellion, and it was led by this group that had Christian roots, basically. And so there were a lot of Christians that fled China after that. In the late 1800s. One of them was my great-grandfather, Young Yik. He escaped to Hawaii. And a lot of Christians went to California as well, you know, helped build the Transcontinental Railroad, of course, as we know. So Christianity and China haven't mixed for a lot of reasons in the past, but also the communists are atheists. And for atheists, if you have an organized religion, that's a threat. So today, Liz, even though there were a lot of crackdowns when Mao Zedong took power in the 1940s in China, crackdowns against Christians, there were less than 4 million Christians in China at the time. Now, Liz, there are about 60 million Christians in China. It's rapidly growing. So that's a threat to the Chinese dictatorship. So basically, what we're seeing now is a crackdown, like against this pastor. We're seeing a lot of these houses of worship, which are informal in China, because if they try to become formalized, they suffer more of a crackdown. So it's a threat to this brutal regime, this dictatorship. But the left is very silent in the United States because they just want to destroy the United States for the leftists here. They don't really care what's going on in China, even though it's horrific.
Right. Well.